Greetings and welcome to the latest edition of the Entheogenic Evolution Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Martin, and I'm happy to have you with me today. I have just got a jam-packed episode for you here on the Entheogenic Evolution Podcast. My guest is Suzi Kalypso from the Temple of Eden, the Bufo and Multi-Sacrament Church down in Southern California. This interview has actually been many years in the making, as Suzi explains in our interview, that she first started the Temple of Eden 5 years ago, and pretty much right away, I invited her to be a guest on the podcast. She really wasn't comfortable doing any kind of public speaking at that point, and she said, well, I'll let you know when I'm ready. Here we are 5 years later, and she is ready, and we really have just a great conversation to share with all of you guys. I'll let her explain it all in the interview. But Suzi is someone who's been very public about her temple in Southern California. She has a very flamboyant visual style, which has ruffled some feathers out there in the medicine world. It's just the way things go, that people don't like it when you're just trying to be yourself, and doing that in a way that's unabashed and that is bold and is out there. And just really appreciated this conversation with Suzi. So looking forward to getting that to you in just a few moments. But I do have some announcements first. The first is to let you know that prior to the interview with Suzi, I do have another mini interview that I have produced in promotion of my upcoming 5-MeO-DMT Integration Specialist training course with Mindscape Institute. For this little mini interview, I invited Sarah Napick, who has been a guest here on the podcast previously, to join me for a few moments to talk about her experience of first working with me as an integration client, and then as a consultant, and for her developing her own entheogenic church in the Bay Area in California, the Altar of the Heart Church, where she also works with Bufo, and then also as a fellow instructor now at Mindscape Institute, and thought that she would give a well-rounded perspective of her workings with me and what she felt she got out of being an integration client of mine, being in class with me, and now being a fellow instructor. That's about 7 minutes long, so we're going to have that right before the interview with Suzi. And of course, speaking of my 5-MeO-DMT integration training course, enrollment is now open for the fall term. We're going to be starting the class on September 9th. It goes for 9 weeks, and enrollment is now open. I've got lots of information about it up at my newly and continually being renovated webpage. I actually have a former student who is in my 5-MeO integration training course who has just taken it upon himself to do my search engine optimization and improve my website and my web presence and all of this stuff. So I'm doing more stuff on the web than I've ever done before. And it's all thanks to this former student, Sasha. But we've got information about the class is up on the website. You can always just email me at martinwball@gmail.com if you'd like to ask any questions or get any more information about it. You can just swing by martinball.net and enjoy my newly renovated and, yes, continually updating page. We're pretty much changing it every day and adding things and moving things around. And wanted to announce starting today, and I will be mentioning this on the upcoming podcast episodes, that I'm going to be having a free Zoom meeting on July 15th. I'm just calling up my calendar here. Yes, I said it for Wednesday, July 15th, from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, which is around the same time that I offer the class. Classes are on Wednesday afternoons from 3 to 5 p.m. But this is going to be an intro webinar hosted via Zoom, all about the class and about what it really means to offer integration for 5-MeO-DMT. Going to be presenting on my non-dual energetic approach, which comes out of my own experience with 5-MeO-DMT, both as a facilitator and as a person experiencing it, and that is grounded in my intellectual overview, which I've always called the entheological paradigm, which I have been writing about and expressing about and sharing about ever since I went through my own non-dual awakening and transformation process in 2008 and 2009 with 5-MeO-DMT. Anyway, this is going to be a free hour-and-a-half long event, and it's for anyone who just wants to learn more about the class or learn more about what I teach in the class or how I offer integration and how that serves people working with 5-MeO-DMT, and also how you can apply it to any other psychedelic medicine and any other experience that is out there. So I don't have a lot of details about this just yet. There will be the ability to sign up for it on my webpage eventually. We're not quite there yet. So for now, if you are interested in joining this Zoom call on Wednesday, July 15th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Pacific time, you can shoot me an email at martinwball@gmail.com. I'm not just going to be posting the Zoom link publicly. You will need to contact me, and I will put your email into the Zoom invite list. And so then you will be in the waiting room, and I will let you in to the Zoom call. But again, it's for anyone who just wants to learn more about it. There's no obligation to join the class, and there's no payment. It's going to be free. It's going to be you. It's going to be me, and it's going to be free. And of course, I am always available for 30, 60, or 90-minute integration calls via Zoom with you. I specialize in 5-MeO-DMT, but I'm not limited to that. I'm more than happy to talk to you about any entheogenic experience. And also, you don't need to feel that you need to come to me just for integration. That I do get a lot of people who say, hey, I just want to have a conversation. I just want to talk about stuff. And I am totally cool with that. You might get the impression that I like talking. I like hearing people's stories. I love hearing what people have to share. So I'm more than happy to set up a time with you. Stop by martinball.net for more information, or just shoot me an email at martinwball@gmail.com. And lastly, of course, if you would like to support this podcast, which a small select group of people do out there in the world, you can stop by my Patreon page at patreon.com/martinwball. There's everything from $1 a month up to $100 a month, which also comes with a monthly 1-hour video call with me, which again could be about any topic that you like. It could be ongoing mentorship, ongoing integration support, philosophical discussions, explorations of non-duality, conversations about entheogens, or just whatever you want to talk about. Music, art, photography, birds. If you want to talk about birds, oh man, that'll get me going. So of course there's that. Just reach out. More than happy to set up a time with you. And the last thing that I just want to mention before we get into the interview with Sarah and then Suzi is that I've also been doing a lot of work over at the Entheogenic Evolution YouTube channel. So just want to invite you to check that out if you have not yet checked that out. I've been adding lots of little shorts. I've been busy creating clips from some of my longer videos and interviews that, I do like the long form conversations. I do like the long form talks and explanations of things, but I am now getting in there and making clips out of these longer videos, and I'm putting it into a playlist that are called Martin's Microdoses. So you can get small doses of information, and they're a couple minutes long, 5-7 minutes long, stuff like that. Going to be doing a lot more of those just to make some of this information more accessible to people, and to remind you that I have put together a number of playlists at the Entheogenic Evolution YouTube channel because I have so many interviews and talks. And there's on a variety of different topics. So I have Psychedelic Oregon, which is conversations with people who work in the psychedelic world in Oregon. I have psychedelic retreat centers, psychedelic facilitation and integration and training, psychedelic authors. There's a whole number of different playlists that I've created over there. So it's a great way to explore older episodes of the podcast, and also just all the other stuff that I post over there on the YouTube channel. So I invite you to check that out, and also enjoy the shorts. I've been making lots of shorts with my photography, with lots of birds, nature, landscapes, all the cool places that I've been, and all set to my own original music. So you can check it all out there at the Entheogenic Evolution on YouTube. Okay, so let's get this about a 7-minute long conversation with Sarah. Then we'll get right into about an hour and a half long conversation with Suzi. You can find her online at Temple of Eden. Super easy to find. She's very active on Facebook and on Instagram, and you can find the website for the Temple of Eden online without any difficulty at all. And I hope you enjoy our conversation. We cover a lot of great topics. And let's see. Of course, be back next week with another chapter from the audiobook of The Alchemist and the Eagle, and then more interviews after that, always. So thanks for listening. Enjoy. Hey, so Sarah, I just wanted to invite you to offer a little promo for potential students coming into my 5-MeO DMT integration specialist training course. And though you weren't a student in that class, you and I have done a number of integration sessions over the years. That's how you and I first connected when you reached out to me. And then ultimately you did take the 5-MeO facilitator training course with Mindscape. And you are now one of the instructors in the facilitation training course. So I thought, even though, again, you weren't in the integration training course, that you still might be someone who felt that you had something that you could share with people who were considering, like, why would I want to take the course? What do I think I could get out of it? So that's my little introduction for you. But with that said, why would you suggest somebody take a course with me on this topic of 5-MeO integration?
Yeah, what I've learned from working with you, and I really came to being in my own deep energetic process, and not a lot of people can understand what happens when you work with 5-MeO on an energetic level in the body somatically over time. It's not just something pertained to the actual session, but it's something that can happen for many months to years afterwards. So coming to you from that perspective of someone who'd been through that experience, you were able to help me understand like the actual energetic nuance of what was going on without spiritual language, without like mumbo jumbo, but like from a true energetic perspective of like when the body has energy stored and it needs to be moved, it's going to have to do and release in a way that it's going to have to do, and it's going to have to take as long as it does. But I feel like you're able to offer language to experiences that don't have language. And that's really helpful for the mind to understand what happened in those 5-MeO experiences. And as a facilitator, when we do integration with our clients, they're looking for a deeper understanding of an experience that their brain has zero language for. And I feel like you bring in this like fundamental foundation of being able to offer them reflections so that their experience can ground into the body and not just stay as some fluff, abstract experience in the mind, which is what will happen when we don't learn how to integrate the energetic, massive expansion that we do experience, or even having to revisit trauma in that experience. We get both when we go into those. You help bring in the language and like the embodiment terms to make it real lived experience. And that is why integration is important. And to be serving this medicine without proper integration is unethical, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
we all need to understand how to hold that space.
Yeah, so I want to just go back to something that you've mentioned here that I think for me this is a big part of doing the integration training program is teaching people how to talk to their clients about 5-MeO and also how to listen to their experiences. And so I know that this is something that's come up in our own private conversations about how for people who are going through these integration processes, there can be a strong desire to want to talk to someone and to be heard. But what have you felt of people who aren't trained in this field? Are they able to listen? Are they able to understand? Can you have conversations with people? Or, in other words, like what might be the value of having somebody who's trained in 5-MeO to talk to?
Yeah, when you just asked that question, I felt a lot of emotion rise up in my body of, getting to come and speak to you for my own integration experiences. Um, I really felt seen and witnessed because you understood what I was saying to you. If one doesn't have deep experience with 5-MeO on the receiving end and serving end, how can we offer that deep level of resonance that the person is coming to us without knowing what that experience is truly like? This medicine is unlike any other medicine that there is. Integration for MDMA, for psilocybin, for Wachuma is not going to be the same as integration for 5-MeO when you're literally blowing out of human experience to feel the experience of true love and God. And only then are you able to offer true relation and integration to someone because it lives in the nervous system. And like your energy offers that resonance. And that is why I think it's super important that someone is properly trained by someone who has that already in their energy field, because then they can gift that back to their clients.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm just curious if there's anything you'd want to say on sort of that journey from being an integration client to then being in the Mindscape course and now being a Mindscape instructor yourself. Just anything you'd want to share with people about how has that been for you to kind of move through these very different roles?
I mean, it's such a process of becoming, right? When we're on our path and we follow our path, like the path continues to open up for us. And it's been sweet to get to cultivate this connection with you for many years now. And coming to you for integration and getting to literally say anything, like I never felt judged. I never felt like there wasn't something that I couldn't share with you. And I think that's a beautiful gift that you offer. There's very non-judgmental energy in your space. It's actually pure compassion and love. Like as I share with you, I often can feel you feeling my emotions and literally watching tears come out of your eyes. And like you truly are embodied in the teachings of this medicine. So really want to offer that reflection. Um, and yeah, I came to you early on in my journey as I had learned how to serve the medicine, but was learning how to embody the processes that I was in and getting to cultivate my relationship with you and getting to meet Kirby and then telling you I wanted to open up this church. And it was like, okay, let me come into this course with you and Kirby for the, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. Do I know everything I need to know to hold this in a safe way? And getting to come in as a student and relating to Kirby, it was really beautiful that he was like, will you come in as a guest teacher? And now I get to come and offer everything that I learned. And we all have our different perspectives. So it's really sweet to feel included in that way with the work that Mindscape is putting out, and that, yeah, like have allies in this space.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate all that. And just to kind of wrap up this little mini interview, just want to invite you to let people listening know where you are located and what your offerings are.
Yeah, I'm located in Oakland, California. I have Bufo Church here called Altar of the Heart, and you can find that at altaroftheheartchurch.com. And I also have a women's healing and embodiment program called Devotion, the Path to Peace. And a lot of women come to me to integrate their experience with five, really learn how to create a new reality based on a new perspective, no longer relating to life from their past trauma. And that is at sarahnapic.com/devotion.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. And it's really been a great pleasure and honor of mine to just be on this path of growth and transformation with you, and just where you are today versus where we started doing the integration work. It's just been beautiful to watch this unfolding. And of course, there's still struggle in life, both for you, for myself, for everyone. But just to see the growth and transformation has been beautiful. And it's a great pleasure to refer to you as a co-teacher in the facilitation course and having moved through all of this yourself.
Oh, what a beautiful reflection. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Well, I am just super excited and delighted to welcome onto the Entheogenic Evolution podcast today none other than Suzi Kalypso, joining me from Southern California. Suzi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin. It is such an honor to be here. Thank you for everything that you do for the community, all the education and information that you provide for everybody. You're definitely somebody that people look up to. So thank you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, Suzi. And yeah, I got so many words, I just got to get them out, Well, I'm sure many people listening to the podcast already know who you are. You have a strong presence online on social media, but you are correct me if I'm wrong, you are the founder of the Temple of Eden in Southern California. Would that be correct? That you are the founder? You are the force behind the Temple of Eden.
Yes. Yes. So I founded Temple of Eden 5 years ago in honor of my Army veteran father that accidentally overdosed on Oxycontin.
Mm.
And so a lot of my work, I work with a lot of veterans. I work with a lot of people that have substance abuse issues, trauma, domestic violence. I work with a lot of atheists. A lot of atheists come to my temple because we're not dogmatic, we're
Yeah.
non-denominational. We're not forcing religion or God onto people. We're creating these spaces for people to have these divine experiences. So I would say about 65% have mystical experiences. And then there's a lot of trauma release. And
Yeah.
then the most common thing that I see is people having somatic releases.
Yeah.
That is a guarantee with this medicine.
Yeah. And just so the audience knows that primarily you are a Bufo sacrament church, though just from seeing your more recent posts, looks like there's some use of Wachuma is being introduced into the Temple of Eden, or where you guys are on your sacrament list.
So we started off with just 5-MeO-DMT Bufo being our main sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of these medicines have such amazing healing that they provide. And I've been working with Wachuma for the past couple of years. And just from how much it's helped me work with my masculine energy and balancing the left and right hemispheres of my brain and the feminine and the masculine, I wanted to start sharing it with my community. And so we started hosting group ceremonies for people in LA. And then we recently started facilitating Changa, which is organic DMT that you smoke. We started facilitating those ceremonies. And then we also do psilocybin ceremonies. I don't personally serve the psilocybin or the Wachuma. I collaborate. I work with medicine brothers and sisters that, that's their medicine. They serve it. And then I create the structure. I create the ceremony. I lead it beside them and make sure everything just goes smoothly and safely. And so I don't see us adding any more medicines to our church, but those are the primary medicines that we work in. But Bufo is the main one.
Yeah. Well, we're going to come back to all of that. Excuse me. I've already been talking a lot today, so I got a little scratchy throat. Anyway, we'll come back and we're going to talk about all those sacraments and talk about the Bufo and the people coming to your church. I think all of that is fascinating. I definitely want to get into all of that. But I do want to reverse a little bit, and I want to spend some time just getting to know you, Suzi. Am I correct? Is this like the first real conversation that we've had?
So there was a panel that I did when I first started my church, where I was a new priestess, and I think it was called "Can the God Will the God Molecule Save the World?" And you actually helped me with some of those questions behind the scenes. I don't know if you remember that.
Okay, so that was a while ago then.
Yeah, that was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. So I never forget that, but you really helped me with that because I was still nervous about public speaking and stuff, but yeah, this is the first actual face-to-face real conversation, I think.
Okay, well, great. So this is my opportunity, along with the audience, just to get to know you more and hear a bit more about your background, who you are, where you come from, and then we're going to steer it into how did you get into the psychedelic medicines and all of that. But I just want to start with just you as a person.
Okay.
We already know that you live in LA, but were you born there?
So my father is military. He died about 14 years ago. I was born in Wiesbaden, Germany. Grew up in Hawaii, Korea, Alabama, Florida, and then moved out to LA 10 years ago.
Okay.
And so my background in Florida was 20 years of substance abuse, domestic violence, body dysmorphia. I was a professional model. I was also a real estate agent, and I was also a club promoter for like concerts and stuff. And so moved out to LA, and my first journey with ceremonial medicine was in Peru. I went and drank ayahuasca with the Shipibo tribe. And it was after a really, really public rock bottom. I was in a relationship that was really, really toxic. And it's a very Jerry Springer episode. He left me for another girl that got pregnant by another guy. I thought I couldn't live without him. Went on a 90-day drug binge with cocaine, alcohol, Xanax. Got really, really addicted to nitrous oxide and was, had $1,000 a day habit with nitrous oxide. Was driving doing nitrous oxide. Totaled 2 vehicles within 1 week. The third time that I was driving after I totaled 2 vehicles the prior week, I got pulled over. And when I got pulled over, there was a camera crew from Live PD to film the whole experience, you know? So my rock bottom was a very public crucifixion. And when I was sitting in that jail cell, I had a moment where I was like, what am I doing? Like, like part of me was like, I can't wait to get out to get back on my Xanax and all these medications, these drugs I was addicted to. But then another part of me was like, I could have killed somebody. Like, what am I doing? So I had a moment there where I actually decided to when I get home, I'm going to flush everything down the toilet, which is actually really dangerous to stop Xanax like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I went on, it took about 7 days of a really, really intense detox from the Xanax. And then I stayed sober for about 2 weeks. And then I relapsed on nitrous oxide hardcore for about 30 days, And then I ended up with, I don't even know what to call it, what happened to me, but it had to have been some type of temporary nervous system brain damage that I received from doing that much nitrous oxide, where I ended up paralyzed for 2 weeks. And being paralyzed for 2 weeks scared the absolute shit out of me.
Yeah, that must have been terrifying.
Yeah. And it was God sent, because I was so addicted to the nitrous oxide that if that wouldn't have happened, I would have kept doing it. And, a lot of people don't know how addictive nitrous oxide can actually be. And a lot of times people end up with that situation where they get that temporary, paralysis, and then their body recovers, and then they go back into it and they end up permanently paralyzed in wheelchairs. And so after that happened, I had no fiance. I couldn't do drugs. I had to sit and be sober and just sit with all of this unprocessed misery. And so I thought, you know what? People talk about meditation. Might as well try it. And so I actually I started meditating, and I started noticing a huge difference in my thought processes and the way that it would ground me back into my body. And then randomly, I got the thought, why don't I go to Peru and sit with this medicine that I've heard about? So I went to Peru for 3 weeks, sat with ayahuasca. It was my first experience, was absolutely amazing. The medicine asked me to pledge my allegiance to the good, to the light. Because at that point, I didn't know. I was like, am I a good witch or bad witch? I don't know. And so it asked me, pledge your allegiance to the light. And then it gave me an image that I was moving to Los Angeles. And mind you, I'm from Florida, but when people think Florida, they automatically think Miami. I'm from Northwest Florida, where they call it the Redneck Riviera, like right on the border of Alabama. So it's completely opposite of Miami. It's very, very religious. It's the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
I was considered the local witch in that town because I had a crystal shop. And they actually put me on the front page of the newspaper because of, this crystal shop with all these crystals that they never seen before. And they're like, what is this? They thought it's so isolated, that area. But, so I came back from that experience. I got so much healing from that experience, and it just opened me up. 3 months later, I actually moved out to LA. I didn't know a single person out here. I didn't even know anybody on social media. So I packed all my stuff up, moved out here. For the first couple of years, it was really lonely. I would go to a lot of different, underground communities that served ayahuasca, and I just couldn't connect with anybody. And then it wasn't until a couple of years later, I met one of my close friends that has an ayahuasca church, and we clicked, and then we became friends, and that became my community. I started learning how to facilitate ceremonies through ayahuasca ceremonies under a Colombian taita. And then I actually was really good friends with Chris Young. And so I was actually thinking about starting a franchise of Soul Quest out in California. And then the day that I went there to sit and learn about his whole church process. I went as a participant, not as a facilitator. That was the day that Brandon Begley died. I don't know if you know about that story about the death at Soul Quest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was there that day.
You could share a few details if you'd like for the audience. Yeah.
So I was there that day. I saw how half of the facilitators wanted to call 911, and the shaman and Chris Young and a lot of other facilitators were really, really scared. A lot of times you see, I would say about 95% of the deaths that happen in entheogenic ceremonies are from negligence. It's from people being afraid to call 911. And so all he needed was an IV. He was dehydrated. Not dehydrated. He flushed out all of his electrolytes from drinking so much water.
Too much water. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember, them standing around him on the grass while he was laying on the grass and, just hesitating, not calling for help. And Chris Young is an ex, EMT. So he knew better, but he listened to the Colombian shaman that was actually more afraid of getting into trouble. He was more self-concerned than about getting this boy help. So they didn't call for help until the boy started seizuring. And then by that time it was too late. And so because of that experience is the reason why I take safety so seriously in my ceremonies. It's the reason why I teach seminars on safety emergency protocols for other facilitators on what to do in those situations. And then let me go back. So my first sitting with 5-MeO was 5 years ago. And so up until that moment, I was living in LA. I was dating this, hot Persian crypto god. I was riding around in Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and I thought that was the life. And then I sat with 5-MeO, and I got WWE body slammed into reality of what really matters in this world. Walked away from a lifestyle that just was so superficial. And ever since, I have been completely dedicated to this medicine. Currently, I am a celibate Bufo nun, as that's what I would call it. My whole life is dedicated to this molecule and just, serving it to the community. This medicine is still underground. It hasn't hit mainstream yet. Yeah. And so I founded Temple of Eden about 5 years ago because I wanted to have a structure. I wanted to have, a team of people. I wanted to create a safe space that people could come to receive the medicine with emergency and safety protocols, with integrity. And then also support, because community is everything. I'm not one of those facilitators that just serve medicine. I want to also be able to support people. So we offer free integration support to everybody that comes to any of our ceremonies. We also do free community healing events for people. What I see a lot that happens is I get a lot of first timers with this medicine, surprisingly. A lot of first timers that have never even done marijuana or LSD, and something in them decides that, hey, this medicine is called to me. I want to come try it. So I get a lot of people that are leaving behind, their drinking buddies and toxic relationships, and they feel isolated. So my goal is not just to serve medicine, but also to create community. Community is my family. I don't have family out here. I have 2 children that are, one's 18, one's 26. Both of them have left the nest. And I don't know where I would be without community. Community is like humanity. It's the lifeblood, of existence. And so this work is very, very fulfilling to me. We've served within these past 5 years with me and my team, probably around 2,500 people in private and group ceremonies. I'm still not burnt out. I'm still in awe. So I feel grateful for that. But yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Let me see what else about Suzi Kalypso.
Well, Let me go ahead and pause you there because there's a couple things that I'd really like to follow up on and maybe dig into a little bit more. So, something I'm always interested in is sort of the trajectory of people's own personal spiritual understanding or religiosity. And, I think it's a really relevant question for anybody who's running an entheogenic church or a temple. But it sounds like from your own description, what you shared, and also just let me say thank you for sharing all of those details about your own life, your own struggles with addiction, sort of that hot mess episode that you described there, and then extricating yourself from that. So thank you for sharing that. I know that that's being vulnerable and being very personal. But it sounds like from your description of life in Florida, and I can't help, I've got to comment that, my wife's family lives in Florida. She comes from Florida. So we go out, we visit in the Tallahassee area every year.
Ooh.
And like the first time that I went there, so I was born and raised in California. Santa Barbara is where I was born. And the first time I went out to Northern Florida and we're driving around and it's like house, house, church, house, house, church, 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 house, house, church. And I was just like, there are so many churches around here. Like it's crazy, especially
Yeah.
compared to California. I mean, it's just super different. So that really struck me about Florida. But I can imagine you, running a crystal shop in this kind of mix in Florida could be seen as something quite strange. But so it sounds like maybe you were into what we could call like New Age spirituality at that time, or how did you self-identify? And were you raised with any kind of religion or spirituality from your parents?
So my mother, okay, so my father is American, Irish. My mother is from South Korea. My father was an atheist. My mother, when she first married my father, was Buddhist and then came to America, immediately converted into Christian baptism when she met the Korean church.
Okay,
And
yeah,
so I grew up in Christian school, getting paddled for drawing breast on a mermaid cartoon. Like it was insane. I mean, I remember being 5 years old, laying in bed, staring at the ceiling in terrified, crying fear that I was going to burn in hell, that God was going to punish me for not believing all of this stuff that,
yeah,
I'm being told. And so I went through phases where I got extremely religious and dogmatic and judgmental, where I was
mm,
arguing with people on the internet about Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, so, and I was in church every Sunday, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is God, right? So it wasn't until my father died that I got my belief systems got uprooted to where when he died, everybody, they say the normal things like, oh, don't worry, he's in a better place.
yeah,
Don't worry, he's in heaven. And I never experienced death of a someone close to me until my father died. And so when people were saying these things to me, I was really thinking, is that even real? What is death? Like where is he? What happens when you actually die? And then I went, it was weird. Like I got shook out of this like Christian dogma. And then I went into this like atheist tunnel. And then I started Googling near death experiences because I was infatuated with what people would experience whenever they died. And then that's what opened my eyes to spirituality and metaphysical sciences and stuff. But then there was still a part of me that was like, okay, God's not real, but like I'm spiritual.
right.
So it wasn't until I sat with 5-MeO where I experienced non-duality and samadhi, that very first journey with 5-MeO. I mean, I still think about it every day. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not sitting here still processing and integrating that experience. So, but yeah, my religious background has been, a huge catalyst for me to also help people with religious trauma because what I see that is happening now with Western culture is that Western culture is operating in a very yang energy. It's very masculine. It's very go, go, go. Everybody's in the rat race. Everybody's addicted to Mountain Dew and dopamine hits and sex and greed and power and quick fixes. And I see this as something that brings yin energy back into the sphere, brings that healing, brings that balance back into the sphere. So um, another thing is, with my father's passing, um, it just really opened my eyes to how much healing veterans need. Because my father, he was a helicopter pilot. He got shot, had machine gun wounds, in his stomach. I remember growing up with him going to the emergency room for emergency surgeries because he always had this pain. And it got to a point where towards the end, I didn't know if my father was like just addicted to opiates or if he really had pain.
Yeah.
And then right before he died, the last surgery, they accidentally discovered a broken syringe needle that he had been carrying around in his intestines since Vietnam.
Oh my goodness.
He had it in a jar and was like showing me, he's like shaking it. I felt so bad because I was like, wow, he really, it wasn't just like the opioid. Because, it's hard to tell when somebody has a problem when they also have pain. But, these medicines can be very addictive. And so we help people heal from religious trauma by when people hear the word God, a lot of times people get triggered because of the dogma and the shame. But I think that these medicines are here to show you what God's source, spirit, whatever you want to call it. Like I'm not forcing any beliefs onto people. We create that container for them to have that experience through the lens of their own perception of what God's source, spirit, or existence, whatever this is. And so another thing is like a lot of times people come into these experiences curious because we get a lot of scientific minded people that don't have a mystical bone in their body. And people like that need proof, they need science, right? And so I feel like this medicine gives them a tool where they can see what's behind the veil. Like I served a scientist that his whole life was dedicated to anti-aging and avoiding death. And he was so afraid of death. And then he experienced ego dissolution, death, and then samadhi, and came out of it and was in tears. And it really awakened something really beautiful in him because it's not everybody has mystical experiences with this.
Right.
But the ones that do, a lot of them tend to be, non-believers. I was one of them. My belief systems have shifted. I have multiple perceptions of what God's source is. I'm not stuck in one form because I feel like as humans, I don't think that our human minds are ever going to fully grasp what that concept is. I don't think that we're meant to really fully understand that in this human experience. So, yeah.
Well, even with that, let's talk about this a little bit more because I think this is a really interesting point. And even though 5-MeO is becoming much more well known now, like I always like to compare it to when I first started talking about it on the podcast in 2008, and I called it the God molecule, and that pissed everybody off. Like, how dare you use the word God? And then when I said this is the most profound psychedelic that exists on the planet, lots of people didn't like that. They didn't want to believe that. They wanted to think that I was just making stuff up. But your own story kind of highlights this a little bit. So even though a lot more people have experienced 5-MeO now, still it's probably small numbers compared to, say, ayahuasca. And so I think it's an interesting point of comparison that you've already described for yourself, so that you were recovering from having been religious, also recovering from having been atheist, which is just kind of the polar opposite of being religious, and then kind of fall into that category that many people in the contemporary West like to adopt of, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, right? So that I'm open, I'm exploring, I'm not being dogmatic, but I'm interested in these spiritual questions, metaphysical questions. So it sounds like many people, you found a good home in the ayahuasca world, right? That provides a level of spiritual experience for a number of people, seems to be very open in terms of, well, what's really out there, but it can still be hard for people to grasp. Like from your description of your first Bufo experience, which you described as mystical and non-dual, and just as you've said, not everybody has that experience. It's really important to let people know, like, it's not automatic. It happens sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time. But it's a different kind of experience. And that for those who do have that full non-dual experience, that full ego death, that full absorption into that samadhi, that union state, it tends to be a pretty quick cure for any form of atheism. Because even if when the ego returns, there's still that sense of not quite sure how to describe this, not quite sure what box to put it into, but that atheism thing I was growing off of, that's definitely wrong because there's something else really profound happening here. So I just wanted to invite you, if you could share, if you feel inspired, anything more that you would want to share about that distinction, and with the idea that, again, there's people listening who still haven't experienced 5-MeO. Like if you could kind of point them to, well, what is that difference, and why is 5-MeO so much more of a, for me, it's the ultimate revelation. It's like that, oh, this is it. Yeah. I thought whatever was happening before was it, but no, this is it.
I try, so anytime that people come to my ceremonies, I do a 1-hour presentation slideshow on how to prepare, what to expect.
Good.
And I try my hardest to explain what different experiences that they can have. And even as I'm thorough, people will come to ceremony, experience the medicine. They're like, yeah, there is no words for this, So the biggest thing that I have, one thing that I do say is trying to explain a 5-MeO experience to somebody that's never experienced it is like trying to explain the colors of a painting to somebody that is blind.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I have seen with people's experiences on the mystical side is that when they have that ego dissolution and they no longer have that human ego identity briefly in that moment, there's a potential for them to get a glimpse of what is underneath the human experience.
Yeah.
And so they realize that there's something that exists beyond my human identity that is observing the experience.
Yeah.
And then they get into this realm where time doesn't exist. You're a million years in the future, a million years in the past, all at the same time. You're healing past lineages, future generations. You're healing yourself. I mean, it is such a profound experience. I mean, my whole I try to escape and go on vacations to get away from Temple of Eden and 5-MeO world because I'm so consumed by it, because it's such a powerful medicine, and there's so much future opportunities with this medicine for healing. I feel like the collective. And I saw where Trump mentioned in a video where he said, maybe give me some Iboga and some of that toad afterwards, but I felt like there was a little bit of sincerity in him. I think that he is a soul that is suffering, that could use some 5-MeO.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you describe that there's this something else that is infinite, that is underneath the human persona, that is observing. And the way that I like to describe this, and just try and put it into really simple language, is that through the ego, we all become identified as the character that we're performing as. So for you, your character is Suzi. For me, my character is Martin. And that's how we experience ourselves, like most of the time. Yet when we dissolve that character construct, what becomes revealed is that there is one actor that is actually playing all the parts simultaneously. And that's what we really are. That's the real being, the real consciousness. And that you and I, as these individuated beings, I mean, we are different people. your body is different than my body. You have a different history than mine. You live in LA. I live in, Southern Oregon. So we're definitely different people. But that life force, that energy that makes us who and what we are, that is performing as the character, that's what's identical. That's what is underneath. And so that's for me is this universal being and consciousness. And that's why I like to use the word God. It's like, I don't have a better word for that. Like this infinite intelligence and being that is everyone and everything and has been through all space and all time because it is everything. Seems like God is a good word. And I never mean that in a religious sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And another thing that I try to explain to people about the many different expressions of this medicine is one that I like to call the return to innocence, where they show up thinking, I need to kill the ego. The ego is bad. I need an ego death. I've done all these horrible things. I'm traumatized. And they take the sacrament and then they have that dissolution of ego and then they get to see how beautiful and how pure and innocent and how much love is underneath all of this human programming and ick. So that's another thing that I really love to watch and witness with people.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way of putting it as well, that we get so identified again with the character and the struggles and the deficiencies and the limitations and the traumas and the wounds of the character that might feel that we are, quote, unfixable or we're irredeemable or we're unworthy or that we're just pain and struggling. But underneath that, there's something quite different. And yeah, that's the innocence and it's quite profound. And this is where I think you and I, and really anyone who's had these experiences with 5-MeO, this is really what drives us forward of, as you say, that you wanted to dedicate the rest of your life to this molecule. And that was definitely my experience as well. It's like, people need to know that this is possible, that this experience of going beyond this wounded, separated sense of self, and that underneath that is something really, really profound, and that it's our birthright as human beings to know this, and that we have this molecular key that unlocks this potential is nothing short of a miracle that this actually exists in reality, and that the access route is right there.
The panel that I did years ago that was called "Can the God Molecule Save the World?" My take on that was, let's start with our local communities, but let's also start with structure and training. And so I love that you do integration training for people. I've heard so much amazing feedback from people that have taken your integration course. But I definitely think that while this medicine is still underground, I like that it's taking its time to go mainstream because I don't think that the world is quite ready for it yet. I think that we definitely need a lot more education, a lot more structure. I don't see this being able to be served in a clinical paradigm anytime soon. And then the thought of a clinical paradigm kind of, makes me cringe. So I'm hoping for that hybrid version, of where they implement the spaces where they honor the mystical and spiritual experiences that people have, because you can create a safe, solid clinical setting, but then without meaning, people are going to end up, feeling destabilized from that or feeling empty and fragmented. So, but then if you have, just the spiritual part without having any clinical aspects of, screening and preparation and, the set and setting, I feel like that can also leave people feeling really destabilized. Because my take on this is that I love for people to have mystical experiences. I love when people experience God consciousness and, oh, we are God, I am God, we are one. Like, that's amazing. But my main objective is a lot more grounded. What can you take from this experience and implement it into your daily life?
Yeah.
Because you still got to go back home. You still got to take out the trash. You still got to go to the grocery store and buy apples. You know what I mean? So it's like, what can you take from this to help improve your relationships, to help you forgive more, love more, be a better human being?
Yeah.
So,
well, all of these elements are so important. And like, I'm really glad to hear that before serving someone, you've got this hour-long presentation. And this is one of the places where I keep trying to push people who facilitate and who serve medicine, especially 5-MeO, is just trying to urge them, please make sure you're educating people first. And this is where just a lot of people just don't do it, where people show up for a ceremony and there's no education, there's been no screening, there's no preparation, and it's like, okay, here, sit down, I'm lighting the pipe and handing it to you. And then here you go. And then afterwards, people are okay, now you go on your way, you go back home, and there's no work around integration. So that this, I think it's perfectly possible, as you're describing here, to have this hybrid between, so the therapeutic model is we need to do screening, preparation, education, and then also provide some kind of community integration support afterwards. But then the ceremonial model is this is also in a community context. This is something ceremonial. We're going to talk about it as something sacred, and we're going to preload sort of these spiritual aspirations, which I think is fine for humans. So that it sounds like it's a nice combination of these elements, and just where I see both, like I'm just thinking about how when I went to the Santo Daime Church, and I'm not trying to bag on the Santo Daime Church in any way, but there was, I had to do an interview about why do you want to come to the church and drink our ayahuasca, or they call it daime. And so, had an interview, but then there was no discussion of here are the phenomenon that you might experience or what to expect. And then there was no integration. It was just like, okay, you're coming next week. Okay, come next week. Or when I went to the Native American church, there's no discussion about this is what peyote does. And now I think even though peyote and ayahuasca can both be very strong, they're still actually rather mild compared to 5-MeO. So I think it's even more important that we have these discussions. But it's just a way of saying that the ceremonial model wasn't built around this more educated awareness around the importance of that therapeutic model of these different elements of preparation, facilitation, and integration. So I'm glad that you're incorporating all of that into the Temple of Eden. So I want to talk now about, or actually, let me pause. Anything you wanted to add to my little monologue there?
I would say that integration is just as important as the journey. I mean, you can serve somebody this medicine 1,000 times, but if they don't learn new coping mechanisms, if they don't know how to process their experience, they're just going to cycle back into those same addictions, those same, disdain for life. So integration is everything. I do private and group ceremonies. I've served around 2,500 people. I've never had anybody go into psychosis. I've never had anybody come out of ceremony suicidal. My screening process is very, very, very thorough. I mean, I say no without guilt. I mean, there's just people that aren't a good fit for this medicine. And then also, whenever I am doing these presentations for preparation, I'm not just presenting this as a miracle cure-all, quick fix. I'm letting people know that this experience can be a catalyst for a dark night of the soul. That after this experience, there might be a couple days where you feel like absolute shit. That after this experience, you could feel angrier, you could feel more anxious, that you could feel more depressed. You could be angry at Suzi and be like, why did I even do this?
Right.
But I tell people, I prepare them and let them know that it's part of the process, that the medicine is bringing up suppressed emotions and trauma for you to heal it, feel it, and release it, So I prepare people for that so that they're not blindsided with that. And then also, I'm very, very, I interact with my community. I'm at every event. I'm at every ceremony. I'm on every training call. I'm on every integration call. So when there's anybody if there's anybody struggling, which that does happen sometimes the day after a ceremony, they can just call me. They can just call me and say, hey, Suzi, I'm having a hard time. I don't charge for private integration. I don't mind getting on the phone with people to give them support. We also have temple psychologists, psychiatrists, trauma specialists. We have substance abuse counselors that I also have, that I work with, that also work with the molecule, because I don't work with clinical people that don't have any experience with this medicine. that I will refer people to after their experience if they're struggling with that, So I think it's so important to have that support, but also educate people on recognizing that this is not a quick fix, that when people come to my ceremonies, I want 100% commitment from the start, from the preparation, from the diet to, coming to ceremony, and then also the integration process. I think it's all important. It's just not a one and done. Most people will never hear about this medicine on a planet of 8 billion people. Okay. So the ones that do hear about this medicine, half of them are scared to do it.
Yeah.
And then the other half, they want to come and sit with the medicine. And because this is not a recreational medicine at all. So most people that come to sit with it will only sit with it one time. We'll have some that will come back a couple more times. And then we have some that have more trauma that they need to work with. But to me, I explain to people, if you're going to come and experience this most likely one time, give it your all from start to finish. And I promise you, if you follow my guidance on, the steps to take, receiving our free support of integration, you will see some changes in your life. It's not going to be automatic changes. Sometimes there could be automatic changes. Like, for instance, one of the things that 5-MeO really helped me with was, I come from the South, and coming to LA traffic, it amplified my road rage. I was throwing water bottles out of windows and just cussing people out and flipping the bird, and 5-MeO like really helped me to where, like, I'm driving around and just this Zen energy. Nobody can make me angry anymore. Like, I'm letting people cut in front of me. So that's a big change that automatically happened after 5-MeO, So it's so different in how it works with each individual.
Yeah. So let's turn now to the decision and then the effort of going above ground and creating this really rather public temple, the Temple of Eden. And it's in such stark contrast that I know that there's a lot of 5-MeO facilitators down in Southern California, and virtually all of them practice underground. And some are more ceremonial, some are more therapeutic, some do groups, some do one-on-one. There's a lot of variety. But this decision to go public and to go above ground and to really make some noise, that, look, we're here. This is what we're offering. We're not trying to hide any of this. Just tell us a little bit about that process and that decision for you, and then also the practicalities of how'd you go about doing it?
I think people get a little confused when they see my appearance and they see like this feminine, girly, aesthetics, but underneath it is a warrior. I am fearless when it comes to this medicine. I'm not afraid of going to jail. I believe in this molecule so much that I'm not going to hide, because this is a medicine. This is a gift from whatever created this matrix. This is a gift for humanity. And so, there's a difference between starting a church because you're wanting to have a loophole to run a clinical business versus having a church with religious sincerity. Mm. And so I would bet $1 million on the fact that we probably have had DEA come to my ceremonies and sit through the whole ceremony process, take the sacrament, and go back and give a report. But, what they're putting on that report is, I'm pretty sure that, they're stating that we're doing it with religious sincerity, that we're doing it in a ceremonial setting where we have prayers and intentions, and, where the point of these ceremonies are spiritual healing. And so, I always wonder what they would go back to on the report. It's like, I sat in the ceremony, I received the sacrament, I met God, and then, and then you have the DEA doing their de-integration where they're telling them that none of it was real, So I always wonder about that part. But yeah, I mean, we've been 5 years out in the open. I also think that I live in one of the most liberated cities in the entire world. to where it's at a point now where I think the DEA is kind of leaving entheogenic churches alone. They're more, I think they have their hands full with fentanyl right now. And I think that they're also more concerned with distribution,
Yeah.
churches that are opening just to kind of use it as a loophole to like sell vape pens and marijuana or, other sacraments. So I think that they're more focused on that because I don't see them coming after somebody like me because they don't want someone like me on trial. I mean, I could bring in thousands of witnesses that will testify that they experienced God and spiritual rebirth. And another thing is that, like I understand uh, religious freedom. And I also do church formations for people. So within the past 2 years, I've actually helped establish 14 other entheogenic churches. And
Wow.
so I have a legal attorney that I work with where he does the legalities of the filings of the articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State. And then my part is to help train them on how to run their church because the failure rate of people that start entheogenic churches, I would say, are at about 90%. Um, you need to have a mixture between having that spiritual connection with that connection with the medicine, but then also you got to be able to know how to balance a checkbook and, do an Excel spreadsheet and run logistics and be able to do overhead and budget planning and all that stuff. And so when you look at the medicine community, you'll see people that are really talented medicine facilitators, but they're not grounded in
Yeah.
the 3D world. They don't know how to budget money. And then you have these people that are really good at money and finances, but they don't have a connection to the medicine. So my goal is to bring that gap to close that gap to where people are able to have, both feet rooted, one in spirit, one in the 3D matrix. And then also offer mentorship. Unfortunately, I did not have the mentorship to run an entheogenic church. I did not even have proper training to learn how to serve 5-MeO. The guy, I'm not going to mention his name, that trained me, basically was like, you put the medicine in the pipe and then you light it and you put it to their mouth. That was it.
Yeah.
That was like the training. So everything that I've learned is from hands-on. Everything I've learned is being in so many different communities, so many different ceremonies, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and then just bringing that all into what Temple of Eden is. And then another thing that has really helped is I used to be really sensitive to criticism, like really, really touchy. But I've had to learn, to be diplomatic, running an entheogenic church and working with the public at this level, navigating all these different traumas and projections and, personalities and shadow. That could be tricky. But another thing that I learned, hold on, my mind just went blank. What was I talking about before that?
Um, just navigating the different responsibilities of putting together the church, and it sounds like different ways that perhaps interacting with the community, different projections. You said that you used to be really sensitive to criticism.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So what helped Temple of Eden become what she is now at her level is being open to constructive feedback from my peers, from people that I've served, from other, elders, like people giving me feedback, showing me what my blind spots are so that I can improve it and make things better. So, but also it's like, I'm not selling any sacrament. I'm creating safe spaces where, let me knock on some wood. I've never had a medical emergency. Um, I'm really thorough with the screening process. I have had, situations where people were, on, benders and showed up to my ceremony, strung out, and we could tell that they were, on substances. And we tell them that, we're going to link them up with our substance abuse counselor and they can come back after they get clean, and I just credit them. I'll just give them another ceremony whenever they get clean, so we'll work with people. We also have a really, really strong preparation process to where we have, like for instance, one thing that I will not do is I will not convince anybody to take 5-MeO DMT.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of phone calls from mothers, wives, grandparents that are concerned with like their family that is an alcoholic, or, they're saying, Suzi, can you please talk to my grandson and get him to come and do this medicine? And I tell them that's not going to work, because I need that person to be 100% committed to the process, so, this is something that I don't get. Luckily, I don't get people that just show up thinking that this is just a game or playtime, or that this is going to be recreationally. I think by the time that they meet my energy and they see how serious I am about this, and that, the hour-long presentation, I think it makes them sit up straight and, take this a little bit more seriously. And they see that this is, the real deal. Like, this is something that, can be a catalyst for massive healing and changes in your life. So, but yeah, being out, in the open the way that we are. I mean, once the cat's out the bag, it's not like you can put it back in the bag. And, but working with new churches, I also give them advice, because I have a past with modeling. I know what it's like to be in the public eye. I know what it's like to be under that pressure, to have eyes on you. So I was able to take that experience into being going public with Temple of Eden, to where it didn't put me under pressure, when I felt, as soon as I went public, everybody's eyes in the 5-MeO was like, who is this girl with these long fingernails and these rainbows and leopard print?
Yeah.
Like, who is this chick, And so what I advise people that are coming in to start new churches is I tell them that they have two options. You can go public if you can handle the pressure, because I advise them to not go out in the open public when you're a brand new church, because first, I feel like you need to get your feet wet to see what it's like to run the church. You don't want to have the pressure of being paranoid about the DEA watching you, paranoid about every other bufo facilitator in the world keeping looking at you, judging you, wondering if you're the real deal or not, being under pressure. And then on top of that, adjusting to this new role of not just facilitator, but also like church leader, founder. Like you have a bigger role and responsibility to not just one-on-ones, but the community itself, so I give people advice on that. So and then I also tell people to kind of take their time. It's not, a rush. You don't want to burn yourself out. I would say the shelf life of, I've started training facilitators to serve 5-MeO about 3 years ago. So I do about 10 students per 6 months, and it's very hands-on. We go through a lot of, education, but most of what they're going to learn is in the ceremony space, witnessing and holding space for those different expressions. Because it's easy to sit there and watch somebody lay there in a meditative state. So that's not what makes the good facilitator. The good facilitator is the ones that know how to gently restrain and hold space for those challenging journeys, So I do have a no-touch policy in my ceremonies. I don't interfere unless it's absolutely necessary, because I don't want to imprint my energy onto people. But of course, if people reach out their hand and want their hand held, of course, we're going to hold their hand. If they want a hug, of course, we're going to give them a hug. But, we get people that have sexual trauma in their past, so I don't want to re-traumatize people. I mean, I don't even remember what your question was. I can go on and on.
No, it's great.
Literally, whereas I can just talk about 5-MeO forever. I know people around me, they get, my child is like, Mom, can we please not talk? When we got into an Uber, my child was like, okay, Mom, I bet you can't get into this Uber and not talk about 5-MeO or astrology. I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, I can do this. Watch. So we get into the Uber, And of course, the first thing is, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? I'm having a really bad day, man. I don't know. This life sucks. And then my child looks at me, and then, of course, I get into a conversation about like healing and entheogens. And I probably had invited more Uber drivers to 5MEO. I feel like the Oprah Winfrey or Bufo. I'm like, you get Bufo, you get Bufo, and
Yeah.
look under your chair, it's Bufo. Come get Bufo.
Well, those of us who are inspired by it do tend to want to talk about it. I mean, it's one of these interesting paradoxes. I've talked with a number of people recently about this, how it can be difficult to talk about it, especially to explain it to somebody who hasn't experienced it. But finding the right words can be challenging for people. But there's just such a strong inspiration of, I want to talk about this. I want to share about this experience with others. So just think it's kind of part and parcel with entering into the 5MEO world. So I appreciate all that you're sharing here, Suzi. But
I actually, after my first journey, like I was ready to go knock on people's doors and ask them if they met my Lord Savior 5MEO DMT.
Yeah.
Like it's a joke between me and my team, but that's how inspired I was by this medicine.
Yeah. Well, that's for me. I didn't go door to door, but I had a podcast. And I've been doing this podcast for a long time. And back when I first started this and first experienced 5MEO, there were maybe only 4 or 5 podcasts in the world that talked about psychedelic subjects. I mean, it's not like it is today where everybody has a podcast and there's millions and millions of podcasts. So mine was only one of a handful. And that was me shouting it from the rooftops as I got on my podcast. And it's like, everybody needs to know what this molecule is and what it can do. So that was me going door to door and just shouting it out on the podcast. So I'm with you. I know what it's like. But let's talk about the Temple of Eden. Do you guys have a dedicated space where you meet? Do you have like your own grounds or property, or is it more of one of these churches where the church is established wherever people are meeting and gathering, or is it a bit of both?
So the ultimate vision for Temple of Eden, I see this happening within 10 years, is us actually building a mecca, like a center, where we have like a space where we can do retreats and ceremonies. We have an outdoor area and an indoor area, and then a place where we're also training people and educating people and also doing free community events. So right now, I live in my little apartment here in LA, but we have three areas where we do ceremonies. So we do our group ceremonies. So we serve about 20 people in a group setting. Not everybody takes the medicine all at once. We don't serve it like that. But it's in a place where they do weddings. It's a really beautiful outdoor area in Menifee. And so it's a big field. So everybody's spread out, and we serve people like that. And then I do private group ceremonies. And so these are more like, I would call it more semi-private, because I'll rent out a space like a house or an Airbnb. And then, I'll have about 15 people come in, and we'll have the living room space cleared out. And we do the introduction, we do the prayers together, we set the intentions, we do the cleansing ritual together. And then we do meditation together or breath work. And then when it's time for them to receive the sacrament, we take each individual back to their own private room to receive the sacrament with our facilitators and students who are in training. And then after they're done with their journey, they come out, we feed them a nourishing meal. And then, most of these spaces have about 4 or 5 bedrooms. So we can get through, 15 people pretty quickly. Not rush though, like we're not rushing anybody's journeys.
Yeah.
And then after everybody has received their sacrament and everybody's been fed, then we come back together to do a closing integration circle with the prayer to close out. And so that's typically how the private group ceremonies. And then I also do private one-on-ones where I'll go to people's houses and facilitate the ceremony at their location. I'll give them directions on how to set up their living room, move their coffee table, lay out blankets, and have the trash can and paper towels. I'll bring my assistants. Usually it's my students in training, or some of my team members. Sometimes we have live musicians that will come and play music. A lot of times people can't do the ceremony private one-on-one at their residence, and so they'll rent out Airbnbs, and then I'll come to their Airbnb to do the ceremonies. But the ultimate goal is an actual location.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, not yet.
Okay. Well, that'd be nice. I'd like to see that. In establishing the Temple of Eden, something that a lot of people do when they're creating the entheogenic church is like creating a declaration of central beliefs or doctrines within the church. This is kind of part of how do you jump through the hoops to get considered to be a legitimate religious enterprise in the United States. Is that something that you did? And if so, what went into that and how was that process?
So the church filing process is basically filing with the Secretary of State your articles of incorporation. And so a lot of people think that whenever you file to become a church through the Secretary of State or whatever state you're in, that you have to define that you are serving Schedule One controlled substances. You don't have to say that. When you say the activities of your church, you can say spiritual healing for the community, community events, stuff like that. But your statement of belief, statement of faith, that's where you're going to put, what your belief systems are as a church. For the Temple of Eden, I don't have my state. I can pull it up on my cell phone and read some of them to you if you'd like. But I could just recite a couple of them off of my memory. The number one sacramental use that we believe that this medicine does is we believe that 5-MeO-DMT takes you to the same exact realm that you go to when you have your physical death. And it's the same realm that you are in whenever you're in your mother's womb. So it's the same place that you come from when you are after you're leaving your mother's womb. And it's the same place that you go to whenever you are actually having your physical death. And so we believe that 5-MeO is actual, what happens to you when you have the human ego dissolution, human right. death. And then another one is we believe that this is something that brings us in direct communion with Source Creator. And so we believe that this is a gift from whatever created this matrix. We believe that it is a divine intelligence and that this medicine has these, I don't even know what to call it, codes, blueprints, spiritual downloads that, this medicine is so intelligent that it knows you, it knows your past incarnations, it knows what your karmic goals are this lifetime. And so whenever you merge with this medicine, it's a catalyst for spiritual awakening. It's a catalyst for Dharma. It was a catalyst for my Dharma, aligning me with that. And then now I'm helping others align with their Dharma, so it's just this beautiful medicine that just keeps on giving and giving. Because at first I thought it was amazing just to receive the medicine. Like I was like, wow, like this medicine is so amazing. And then the next phase was serving the medicine, where I was like, oh my God, like I get to serve this to people. And then the next phase was teaching people to serve this medicine. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then the next phase was, and then you get to create 5-MeO-DMT Bufo churches for these beautiful spiritual meccas for this medicine. So I don't know where the next road or what next doors open, but I mean, I'm ready for it.
Yeah. So this is a total side question, but you mentioned the word Dharma, and it just reminded me of your mom. And just to repeat what you shared earlier, that your mom originally was Buddhist, but then she converted to Baptist in the Korean church, which is very, very active at, from South Korea, of converting people to Christianity. What does mom think?
So, man, my mom is in the South, surrounded by Christians, where there's not room for any type of challenging beliefs or difference of opinions. my mom notices the big shift in me. She knows that
Yeah.
I'm not like party girl on drugs and alcohol. She knows, she sees that part. But when I went to Peru, my mom babysat my two kids at that time, and of course I didn't tell her that I'm going to Peru to sit with this, psychedelic juice and, you're going to watch my kids. And so I just told her that I was going to go for adventure and for like, healing for myself after getting out of that toxic relationship. And so after my first ayahuasca journey, I decided that my mom needed to know about this.
Yeah.
So I called my mom and told my mom about my experience and what I was really there for. And her response was, "You mean I babysit your kids so you could go do drugs?" So my mom has not been really open to it. I don't really talk to her about it, but there was a couple Christmases ago that I came home for Christmas, and my mom's a very, like, my mom's personality, she's very cold. She's not very emotional. She doesn't hug, she's a female version of the North Korean president, okay? And we were sitting at dinner, and then my mom just randomly blurted out, maybe I do the todi. And I said, what did you just say? She's like, maybe I do the toady. I said, what do you know about the toad? So clearly my mom has been doing her own little research. It's hard
Yeah.
because what I noticed that is a really big challenge for the 5-MeO realm is there's a language barrier. So like if you go to places like, of course I take people on retreats to Bali. We don't serve any medicine there because it's very Muslim, it's very illegal. But there's a language barrier to where a lot of people don't have information on the medicine in their language. And so I served somebody from South Korea. It was actually a K-pop singer. And he flew all the way out here just to sit with this medicine. And there wasn't like I kept sending him my frequently asked questions, and I would use Google Translator, but he was having a really difficult time because the Korean language just did not have the words or explanation for what like samadhi and spiritual death or your rebirth,
Right.
ego dissolution, so it was really challenging to try to educate him on what this experience was going to be like. So I think that, the world is starting to wake up to this medicine, but I think that there's still a lot of places. And even here in LA, like I've noticed there's a lot of like, especially the Asian community, an Asian community, like it's okay to gamble, it's okay to drink alcohol, but psychedelics, oh no, drugs are bad,
Yeah.
So it's been nice to see some Asians come through in my spaces. I think
Yeah.
they're starting to be more open to it.
And it sounds like mom is getting maybe a little bit more curious.
Yeah, she struggles with high blood pressure. So, and then I would not be the facilitator to serve my mother. I would need one of my
Yeah.
close team members to do that. I don't think I can hold space for that. That would be a very, very dramatic theatrical experience for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Family relationships tends to complicate the experience between facilitation and receiving. Something that a lot of the lawyers who work in the realm of entheogenic sacraments and entheogenic churches, they often advise like only have one sacrament, which doesn't really fit with most people's use patterns in the psychedelic world, where most people who are open to psychedelic medicines are actually interested in multiple psychedelics. And it's very rare that you find someone who's like, nope, this is my medicine, I don't do anything else. So the multiple sacrament model actually fits more with how psychedelics exist socially, and also personally for a lot of people. So going back to something that you mentioned before, that you've talked about how you guys have expanded into some wachuma, psilocybin, also the changa. How do you see that with knowing that the lawyers are like, wait, no, she should only do
So
one.
I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, even with attorneys. And I think that with attorneys, a lot of it can be, they can be a little dogmatic in their stance on things. I'm not going to mention any names or organizations, but this is what opened my eyes to multi-sacrament is and I got to add this disclaimer because I'm not going to speak about this because I'm wanting to influence other people to go and experience this because this is something that is actually really dangerous and people can die from. And so I journeyed with Toei. I don't know if you're familiar with what
Oh,
Toei is.
yeah. Yeah. The
Okay.
Brugmansia.
Yes. So that is a medicine that in patriarchal shamanism is considered black magic, witchcraft. It's bad.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I don't think anything that comes from Mother Earth can be evil. It's the intention behind it. And so I sat with this medicine and through that journey, it was one of the most terrifying, most beautiful experiences I've ever had ever. It took me past the realm of gods. I didn't think that there was anything that could be on a level like 5-MeO. But during that journey with Toei, I got the downloads on how to run my church. Basically, like the do's and don'ts, where you're going to be operating, where you're going to stay away from, how you're going to train people. I mean, and this was from a medicine that, is supposed to be separate from 5-MeO. So I came to the conclusion that all of these medicines are connected to the same divine intelligence. It's just, they're just different outlets, the same consciousness, the same source, the same, creator energy. And so that's where my belief with multi-sacraments is these are all prayers. These are all different connections to the same source, the same divine intelligence. And, with 5-MeO, there's a big controversy on the lineage. I was one of those people when I first started Temple of Eden that wanted there to be a lineage because, all the attorneys said that lineage is the most protection that you could have with, running a church. And as I delved deeper into the information, I came to the conclusion that the lineage wasn't really that concrete of a story. I don't want to go too deep into it because it could be very triggering for people. So my take on being a sacramental church is that we are creating a lineage. I think that, especially with 5-MeO, we have so many different facilitators serving this medicine in so many different ways. And, we're exploring what works, what doesn't, and we're creating that. I feel like we're pioneers. We're paving the way for the future, generations on how to work with this medicine. So it's necessary for, people to be able to make mistakes so that the future generation can learn from our mistakes to see like, oh, that didn't work. This is what works, this and that, So, yeah, I think it's Temple of Eden is we are creating a lineage. We're our own lineage, so we are the future. We are the ancestors of the future generations, as I like to put it.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely this paradoxical state where, yes, the courts, the legal system, they like to look to precedent and lineage. Like, they ask, how long has this been around? Yet also, I think this is where the United States like really excels, sometimes in really bizarre ways, but the United States has always been an incubator of new religious movements and new doctrines, new theologies, new forms of spirituality, probably more so than anywhere else in the world. It's a fundamental part of our national identity, in a sense. Yeah. So, yes, there's an emphasis on tradition and things being old, yet there's also this push for what's new, what's next. And that's where I see these entheogenic churches, is that a lot of it is just in the realm of the brand new. And that, as you say, it's kind of
old doesn't always mean good. I mean,
no.
There was an old tradition where they used to decapitate virgins off of the top of pyramids, like
yeah,
it's tradition doesn't always doesn't make it right, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're part of this really a very new movement of building these traditions essentially from the ground up. And I think that this is where 5MEO here, I have no hesitation to say like 5MEO is fundamentally new. I don't think there's really any long-standing historical tradition anywhere of use of 5MEO, and that to rely on, well, they did it this way. It's like, no, that we're all making it up as we go along, and that there's going to be process of discovery. There's going to be creativity. There's going to be turning around, going in a different direction, making failures. You know, it's just part of this very, very new movement of creating these theogenic churches and really going through that process of what does it mean to build a community, to offer these sacraments, what are our concerns, what are our safety measures. It's all in development now, and that's one of the reasons that I think it's so exciting. In This is one area of American culture and society that I think this is exciting. This is very interesting that this is going on. There's a lot of other areas that are like, oh man, what the hell are we doing? But this is one place that I'm all for it. Even though I myself, I like to say, look, I'm not religious, I'm not spiritual. I do really want to defend people's right to create their own churches, create their own ceremonies, create their own traditions, because this is how many people, human beings, get access to these areas of growth and transformation and healing. And so I think that it's something that legitimately needs to be protected. And I also, going back to like what you were saying about Soul Quest, I know Soul Quest is rather above board for the most part, but this is also why I like things to be as above board and legitimate as possible. So that if there is an emergency, no one has to worry about, we can call the ambulance and we don't have to worry about getting arrested at the same time. We need to make all of this legitimate and above ground. That just protects people ultimately.
one thing that I've learned about dosaging with this medicine is that, you know, if you go across the border to Mexico, they're starting people off at 100 to 150
Yeah.
milligrams. I mean,
Yeah.
that's their average dose. The average dose for full release breakthrough, depending on the potency of the 5-MeO organic secretion, but average Bufo, okay? In my ceremonies, the average dose is 60 milligrams for people to have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And then for men, 60 to 80. For women, usually it's about 40 to 60. Now, I really believe that the reason why I don't have to serve much higher doses is because if you can make people feel safe and they trust you, because a lot of times, I mean, I'm only on social media, so I get a lot of times where people are like, is this like a toad-licking cult? Like, what is this? You know, like, who is this lady that I just booked a ceremony and I'm going to be vulnerable with this complete stranger off the internet? You know, so my goal is to educate them, but to also ground them so that they can feel safe, because the safer that you can make somebody feel, the less medicine that it's going to take to get them to full release.
Yeah.
So that's what I've learned about this medicine.
Yeah. And I think also having a local context that I think, like with Mexico, I think there's so much pressure on both facilitators and clients of, oh, I'm traveling. I've got to go way out of my way to have this experience, and that I'm only booked for an hour. So there's all this pressure of, we're going to get as much bang for your buck for all of this effort, versus if you can just go to a local church or a local temple, it removes that pressure. And also, yeah, traveling to outside of your own culture, going into a different country, there's always going to be anxieties. There's always going to be fears. And certainly Americans have a lot of projections about Mexico, like, oh, it's unsafe and all the cartels and all of that. So it ups all of these pressures, and also creates almost sort of a gung-ho attitude of, yeah, we're going to blast you off. And I would agree that I think that a lot of people working with Toad in the United States, I often hear people saying, oh, between 50 and 80. We don't go above that. But always in Mexico, I hear people that 120, 150, sometimes even going up to 200 or 250 milligrams. And like, that's just outrageous. Like, nobody needs that much.
there's also this concept of more medicine equals more healing. And I think that people, when they hear about this medicine, and a lot of facilitators get stuck in the idea that the only way to receive healing is if you have a full release. And so the meditative doses, the half doses are underrated. A lot of people think that, they don't receive healing if they don't have a breakthrough. And so I think that that's something that a lot of people are surprised whenever they, do a meditative dose with the medicine. And I've worked with a lot of addicts and only given 20 milligrams and had them have, more healing than they had whenever they did full release journeys because they had, their ego was still intact and they were able to actually process what came up. Because sometimes it's so quick, the ego dissolution and the death and rebirth, people are like, what just happened? And
Yeah.
it's hard for people to take from that, and implement into their life, like, what the fuck just happened? So yeah, I think it's so important to be able to work with different levels of dosaging. I think that this medicine, out of all medicines, is the most overserved medicine where a lot of people, I get a lot of people that have stories of just going into psychosis after coming back from Mexico, or you see those retreats where they do the ayahuasca, bufo, mushrooms combo, and San Pedro all in like 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah. The overload that's
Yeah.
like, that's the more is better model on overdrive. And let's just hit
Yeah.
everyone with everything. Yeah.
I want people, if they're only going to come and sit with this medicine that one time, I want them to be able to get the safest, most intentional, beautiful experience as they can. So I don't want it to where I'm over serving people. I'm a gentle server. Like I believe in serving the lowest, most effective dose possible because you can always give more,
Yeah.
but you can't make it stop.
Right.
And I've had people come to me where they're like, I've sat with Jerry Sandoval and he serves me this much. He served me 100 milligrams 10 times in a row in one sitting. Will you serve me like that? I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah. And what did that do for you? It blew my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So integration is so important. So I love that you're teaching people. That's a training that I haven't explored yet, but I think that what you're giving to the community is so needed. So thank you for that. I've heard nothing but just the best people, best reviews from you.
Oh, well, thanks. I enjoy providing that for people, and I enjoy training people on it. And, I enjoyed facilitating 5-MeO, but it really is just a huge responsibility. And that, when I was going through my process with 5-MeO back in 2008 and 2009, like I didn't have anyone to talk to just because there weren't people out there like who had been through this and knew what it was. And so I like to try and be that for others. I want to be what I didn't have at that time.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's where I'm at as well.
yeah,
That's why all my best friends have churches. Because if I go to a regular therapist about my issues with running an entheogenic church, they're not going to
right.
like get it at all. They're going to be weirded out and they're just not going to understand. So I love having close friends that understand the madness and the heaviness and the responsibility. Because I wouldn't be able to do this type of work without the support system that I have. Everybody sees my face. I'm the face of Temple of Eden, but it is not this. It is definitely not the Suzi Kalypso show. It is it. The team of people that I work with, like they support me, they show up, they're so dependable, they have so much integrity. I don't got to worry about any of the men treating the ceremony space as a Tinder dating pool.
Yeah.
Like they just have so much integrity, and they're showing up for the right reasons, and then they support me. I can be a little bit dramatic in Suzi's regular day-to-day life, so they keep me grounded and help me navigate and help me, hold space. They hold me so I can hold the community, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, great, Suzi. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. got to do a little work for dinner here, but it's really been a delight to have this time to get to know you and to have a real genuine conversation with you. And I hope that we will have more and it won't take as long next time, but it's really been a pleasure to have you here. So just to wrap up, for people who are listening, and maybe they're in the Southern California area, how would they find Temple of Eden online? How would people get in touch with you and participate if this is something that they feel inspired to?
So we have two social medias. We have my personal Instagram, which is this is Suzi. This is Suzi. Suzi spelled Suzi, and then the Temple of Eden Instagram is the Temple of Eden. The website is thetempleofeden.com. And then if you want to send a text, you can text 310-912-0490 or our email, which is info@thetempleofeden.com. So, but thank you so much. Like this hour flew by. Like, oh my God, it was such a pleasure to talk to you. So much information that I learned, and thank you.
Yeah, well, it's really been great, Suzi. I'm glad you reached out and let me know that you were ready because I've just been waiting. Like sooner or later, we'll want to get Suzi on the show. But here you are. We've had our conversation, and I look forward to more in the future.
Oh, well, have a wonderful dinner tonight, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
Okay.